who are you?
Hi, I am Nhilce. Yeah, I am Mexican and I am living in Sweden now because I'm working at Stockholm Environment Institute. Who are you? How are you?
I'm Henrik. I also work at Stockholm Environment Institute.
Oh, nice.
I'm half Norwegian. Perhaps you didn't know. I'm
No,
half
that I
Norwegian,
didn't
half
know.
Swedish. So, shall we talk a little bit about what is called the third task in Swedish? Because
Yes.
I understand you didn't really follow what that is.
Well, I didn't study in Sweden,
No.
and I think that's something that didn't exist in my university. Maybe something similar in Mexico,
Yeah.
but would like to know more about
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that Swedish universities have three tasks. And the third task, I will come to that, but the first task is education. And the state usually say that the most important task for universities are education, of course. And the second task is research. And the third task is trying to reach out research and findings from the university to the broader society. So that is called the third task. What we at SCI usually call outreach or communication. I would say Stockholm Environment Institute, SCI, is the third task. That is what we're doing all the time, I would say. We're trying to combine, as you know, doing some research on our own, but also trying to reach out. That's built into our DNA because we are an applied research institute working with those sustainability issues. We almost always do research that are, at the end of the day, the purpose of the research we are doing is actually to reach out. So we don't do these basic research stuff that they are doing at university. So for us, I think this comes very natural to talk about the third task.
Yeah, I think part of our tasks at SEI is like to promote what we do, but also like try to make it understandable for many audiences. And I think it's like I think that's what the third task at the university is also aimed to do, right? Like maybe not only for students but also like for the out there people.
I don't know if you think about this tagline that we have at SEI, Bridging Science and Policy. I've been thinking about that last couple of days actually. I was in Brussels last week talking to people at the Commission and other places in Brussels about the sustainability issue, especially in light of the war on Ukraine now. And I also met some member of parliament, Swedish member of parliament there, and they told me something very interesting, which I think relates very much to the third task. They told me that we don't need more policy briefs, we don't need more research. We know this kind of stuff. And we don't need more research to tell our opponents in the parliament either, because they just say, okay, we know this, but we have our other priorities. What we do need is to have more of political pressure from voters so that they vote for political parties that would like to have change. Because they told me, and they sort of convinced me that politicians do more or less what they have support among the population in Europe with regards to sustainability and climate change. So therefore I started to think, should we change SCI from bridging science and policy to bridging science and society?
I think it's like I've also been thinking about it because recently I was in Bolivia for one of our projects, and the project is almost about to finish. So we were in a lot of workshops and meetings. So it was workshops with people that are supposed to be the ones using our outcomes or what we produce. But there was also meetings with politicians and people from the government. And it's very different what both of them think, you know. Like for the government, it was like exactly what you just said. Like, it's another, I don't know, this is another framework, another kind of research, another very nice publication, this like book that you're giving to us with some specification rules and suggestions. We don't need that. Like we already have a lot and we haven't implemented it. So imagine if we have things done in the past 10 years that haven't been implemented, why would we implement what you just gave, right? And then people were saying, like, when we were telling them how that would be helpful for them, like actually end users, they were very interested in the new technologies and in the new ways of doing things. But they were saying, like, it's very cool and we would really like help you. What do we need to do? But they at the end they would also say, like, you know what's going to happen? It's nothing is going to happen because if the government doesn't apply it, we can't do much. You know? We can do what we can with our resources, but we are never going to have enough resources to apply what you're giving as suggestions.
We know the problems, we know the solutions to a large extent, and many regulations and frameworks has been proposed, but yet we don't see change. Why is that, do you think? What do we need from policy and politicians and people in order to get change happen?
I think I will answer with what we wrote in the youth report as a youth vision. We said the same. We know what's happening. We know the problem. We know we need to do something. There are a lot of alternatives out there, and things are not happening. And climate change has been really recognized as a crisis because it kind of, in some things, it goes slow. And we compare it to the COVID-19 crisis. It was like when COVID-19 started and it was recognized as a crisis, something happened in the whole world. And then people were dying in different parts of the world. And then, okay, everyone said, like, okay, we need a solution. We need a solution. And a lot of scientists and people started to get together and to come up with some. We got the vaccines, you know, and from different countries, and in record time. And we found a solution. And as you were saying, they were not like doing a lot of tests. They did some tests. It worked. Okay, let's do it, you know. We kind of covered the whole world with the vaccine. And so we were... when we were writing the report and we were reflecting about that, it was like, yeah, so we can actually, as a whole world community, recognize when there is a crisis and recognize that we're in threatened and do something. But why we are not doing that in climate change? Like, why we don't recognize it as a crisis? Why it has to be this dramatic that people, a lot of people, millions of people are dying to do something. Actually, a lot of people are dying because of climate change.
Yeah.
But it's like very punctual. And why we're not recognizing it? The decisions that are made and the people that are making decisions are not really involved in what is happening locally.
No.
Very few young people are in these high political decision positions. And if you don't put that perspective into the table, there is never going to be there. As I was telling you before, if we have a conscience like about climate change, like a youth perspective about climate change, there is this climate anxiety that if you ask people, do you know about climate anxiety, or do you think you have felt climate anxiety? Young people are going mostly, like, we did this survey, and 70%, around 70% of the responders said yes. And there were people from 18 to 30. But I don't know, maybe if I ask my mom would be like, anxiety? What's that? Climate anxiety, the list, you know? So maybe she recognized anxiety, but climate anxiety for her is not. And we live in the same world. We live in the same house, and I can see things different. So if I put that, just that example as in my house, how my mom will take a decision on climate and how I will take, it's completely different. So I think the same happens in these tables, in this decision, with these decision makers, with these high level things. If you don't have this perspective of a young person, you can keep doing things as usual. And maybe young people in the tables make actually not just invited, because I've been invited to a lot of conferences. I've even given speeches at the UN representing the youth people of the UN group. And what happens? It's recorded. You can find it in YouTube. It's there. But nothing that I said actually changed. In 4 years, we can say as young people that we won a bit because we are now invited to these tables, to these discussion things. But we haven't won, actually, because we are not there in the decisions. Our voice doesn't have like a real power yet. So I think when we have a seat on the table of decisions, of like really decisions, geopolitical decisions, decisions at our country level or something, then we maybe could speed up things. It's like when Greta started the movement, these EU deals were some EU deals were made after that movement, after they saw a lot of people, these young people fighting and protesting, and you know, and then that inspired other young people around the world, and and then things were like, oh, okay, what are these kids asking for? And then we caught some attention. But if not, I think like we can speed up things, but I think we need really a spot there on the decision making, not only as like part of the table saying like there is a young representative.